The Prydwen is one of the most amazing vehicles that you find in Fallout 4. You're first introduced to it right after your encounter with Kellogg during the primary questline. You find it flying over the mountain range, entering the Commonwealth in all of its glory. It is such a cool moment in the game. We know from previous Fallout games that the Brotherhood of Steel has been fond of blimps for quite some time. In Fallout Tactics, we learned that the Brotherhood of Steel created a fleet of airships and sent them out east. The flagship of the fleet sadly got damaged in a storm and crashed. But the Prydwen was based on the airship designs that the Brotherhood of Steel came up with when they made that initial fleet. This makes the airships and the Prydwen one of the few pieces of original technology developed by people after the war. Paladin Danse tells us that the Brotherhood of Steel creates their T-60 suits of power armor, but they're based on pre-war designs. The airships are completely Brotherhood of Steel ingenuity, both designed and manufactured by the Brotherhood. The majority of the history that we learn about the Prydwen comes from Lancer Captain Kells.
Where did the Prydwen get her name?
Elder Maxson said he took the name from a work of historical fiction. Something about a man who was destined to become a king, and his journey to liberate his people from tyranny and oppression. Seems fitting for such a remarkable ship, wouldn't you say? Quite a feat of engineering, isn't she? It took the Brotherhood's sharpest minds over 2 years to design and more than twice that to build. She was constructed at Adams Air Force Base, just outside of Washington, D.C. There was a vast amount of scrap metal and salvageable components there after we defeated the Enclave. We spent the first 2 years alone gathering the parts. The rest was spent assembling. It was worth the effort.
Did the Brotherhood ever build other airships?
There were less advanced versions of the ship built on the West Coast a long time ago. Historical records about their current status are in dispute, but we're fairly certain that they were destroyed.
The legend that Kells refers to is the legend of King Arthur. In some of the oldest Welsh versions of the King Arthur myth, Arthur and his men board a ship named the Prydwen and set sail to the otherworldly fortress of Annwn. We find this event in the poem Pre the Annwn, and also in the Arthurian story Culhwch ac Olwen, and I'm probably mangling that pronunciation. The Prydwen itself is pronounced differently in the game. Paladin Danse pronounces it Prydwen, which is why most of us pronounce it Prydwen.
We call our ship the Prydwen.
In Welsh, it's probably pronounced Prydwen. Maybe a kindly Welsh speaker can correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, the Brotherhood created the Prydwen at Adams Air Force Base. We're introduced to Adams Air Force Base in Fallout 3, specifically in the Broken Steel add-on for Fallout 3. At the end of that add-on, the Brotherhood of Steel defeat the Enclave and take control of the Adams Air Force Base. They spend a total of 6 years working on the Prydwen, 2 years collecting the materials necessary to build it, and 4 years after that to put the thing together. Proctor Ingram is the primary engineer on the Prydwen, who presumably has been in charge of keeping the thing aloft since its first flight. Elder Maxson tells us that it had been in service for 5 years before Arthur Maxson decided to take the Brotherhood of Steel to the Commonwealth. We learn from Maxson's terminal that Proctor Ingram got the thing working by salvaging a fusion plant from a derelict aircraft carrier. However, the one drawback to this fusion reactor is that it consumes a lot of coolant. Proctor Ingram is having a hard time finding replacement coolant, which is one of the reasons why they are anchored there at the Boston airport. Even idling is consuming too much coolant, and she tells Arthur Maxson that they need to find a new resource as soon as possible, or else they'll have to land the Prydwen, which of course would be a huge security risk. So the thing is nuclear powered. However, I was unable to find anywhere on board where they could be fitting a nuclear reactor. The Prydwen is a thing of absolute beauty. There are 4 propellers at the tail of the ship that propels the vessel forward. The Brotherhood steers the ship through the sky using one tail rudder split into 2 sections. Across the rear rudder, you see an elevator, one on either side, which likely control the Zeppelin's pitch. Lift comes from 5 hydrogen tanks, or bags, inside the vessel.
To keep that baby afloat, it's got massive gas bags full of hydrogen. Helium's rare as hell. Only gas light enough and plentiful enough is good old number 1 on the periodic table. Hydrogen.
Yes, hydrogen. Apparently the Brotherhood has not learned the lessons of Hindenburg and decided to use hydrogen to provide lift to the Prydwen. The vessel weighs 40,000 tons, which makes sense because it's made of steel. It's trying to house, I don't know how many dozen Brotherhood of Steel soldiers, all dressed in power armor. It's got 4 vertibirds at any given time on the flight deck. This is a very heavy vessel, and part of me is having a hard time believing that 5 hydrogen-filled bags would be able to keep all of that aloft. That said, there are also some smaller canisters in the bottom of the Prydwen. They look like they could hold either a fluid or a gas. They're much smaller than the 5 big hydrogen tanks at the top of the Prydwen, but I suppose these could also hold hydrogen. Additionally, there are 4 jets on the sides of the Prydwen. At least I think that they're jets. You don't see any flame coming out of them, and you don't see any distorted light, which would betray the presence of flame or gas or heat. I suppose these could be booster jets. I'm guessing that they're probably stabilizers. They probably wouldn't give a lot of lift to the Zeppelin. They may just be there to stabilize it. Now, one question I could not find an answer to is its maximum speed. It came from the Capital Wastelands, and I'm curious as to how long that trip took. We find very little evidence of that journey on board, just one holotape from one of the soldiers mentioning the ruined skyscrapers filled with super mutants that she saw during the voyage. However, it couldn't have been that long, because Maxon and his Brotherhood of Steel didn't make their trip to the Commonwealth until they got recon reports from Paladin Danse and his team about the Institute and their synth presence here in the Commonwealth. That's why they came. And Danse was only sent to the Commonwealth in 2287. So if any of you have any idea as to how fast this thing could go, let me know in the comments below. To put it in historical perspective, the Hindenburg, which was half the length of the Empire State Building, could fly at max speed at 135 kilometers per hour. That's 84 miles an hour. It had 4 diesel engines attached to propellers, comparable to the 4 propellers at the tail of the Prydwen. The ship itself is split into 4 major sections that the sole survivor can explore. The first is the flight deck. This is where the vertibirds land. There are bays for 4 vertibirds, one of which you can take to the Boston airport and back anytime you want, as an alternative to fast traveling here, and the other ones have vertibirds docking and leaving routinely while you're there. In the back, towards the tail, there's one room which doesn't seem to serve a purpose. There's storage and some other trash and bits lying around, but we don't see any terminals or any other machinery there, so I'm not sure what this back area is for. When you enter the Prydwen from the flight deck, you arrive at the command deck. The command deck has 3 levels. The top level is where you find Arthur Maxon the first time. This is his observation area where he has a great view of the Commonwealth, and sometimes he gives speeches to his soldiers. At the very bottom of the command deck is the room where the Prydwen is piloted. We often find Lancer Captain Kells down here, as well as 2 or 3 other Lancer Knights. In the middle of the command deck is a small storage area with a door that leads to the foredeck. This is an exterior platform with a little bit of storage. Your view is partially obscured by the ship itself. The forecastle, which we'll get to in a moment, has a much better view. Heading up the ladder from the command deck, we reach the main deck. This is the bulk of the explorable territory here on the Prydwen, and it's where you can talk with most of the interesting Brotherhood of Steel characters. Around the ladder are the private quarters for some of the officers. Elder Maxon's room is in the very back where you find his terminal. This is where you can read a lot of really interesting terminal entries about the Brotherhood as you complete quests with the Brotherhood throughout the game. The terminal is updated as the story goes on. To the right of his cabin is Paladin Danse's private quarters, and to the left of his cabin is Captain Kells' private quarters. As you move forward along the main deck, on the right you find Proctor Quinlan. He's in charge of the archives and research and development. He's a good resource for a couple of quests. And on the left you find the clinic, headed by Knight Captain Cade. He's the medical officer on the Prydwen. He's the guy that gives you a medical exam upon joining the Brotherhood of Steel. Moving forward, we find the mess hall. The soldiers tend to hang around in this area, and you can buy all sorts of food from the vendor. Moving forward leads to the power armor garage with Proctor Ingram in charge. This is where the soldiers repair their power armor.
There, try it now.
Nothing. I was supposed to report 10 minutes ago. If you can't fix it...
I can fix it. You're the one who decided to kick your way through a Mirelurk. Got it.
There it is. Thanks, brother. I owe you.
If you join the Brotherhood of Steel, you can use one of the bays to repair your own power armor if you want, and Proctor Ingram is a great source for quests. At the end of the corridor is the shop. This is where you find Proctor Tegan. He has a great assortment of weapons, and he gives you some Radiant quests, and it's also a great place to find an Exo-1 power armor helmet at an early level, but you do have to steal it. The very bottom of the main deck is not very interesting. You sometimes find a patrol and a lot of storage. The second floor is where you find living quarters. There are only a few beds up here though, so it makes you wonder where all of the rest of the Brotherhood of Steel soldiers live and sleep. At the end of this floor, we find the Biological Research Department headed by Senior Scribe Naraya. This is where they do experiments. We find a dead body of a super mutant, which is apparently being dissected. We see a cage of mole rats, which a lot of the other soldiers complain about, especially the smell. Naraya has a lot of angry messages on her terminal, even from some of the senior members of the Brotherhood of Steel, complaining about the noise and the smell. She reports directly to Proctor Quinlan and is a great source of Radiant quests. At the very top of the main deck, you find the 5 hydrogen-filled bladders that keep the ship aloft. The catwalk goes right through the 5 bladders. It seems strange that anyone, any Brotherhood of Steel soldier, anyone who visits the Prydwen, would have such intimate access to these hydrogen-filled bladders, which mean life or death for anyone aboard the Prydwen. Success or defeat for the entire Brotherhood of Steel. It seems like a glaring flaw in the Brotherhood's security. I mean, if I had this beautiful ship, and if I was forced to use a flammable gas like hydrogen to keep the thing floating, I wouldn't make it easy for literally anyone to plant an explosive, or for some drunk guy to shoot a laser rifle just right and bring the whole thing down. I guess the leadership of the Brotherhood of Steel has great faith in the integrity of their soldiers, and whomever their soldiers bring aboard the ship. The catwalk through the hydrogen bladders eventually brings you to the forecastle. This door takes you outside to a long ramp which brings you to the very tip of the Prydwen. The forecastle commands a superb view of the Commonwealth. It's a fun drop to the ground if you're wearing power armor. So there you have it, the full history of the Prydwen, built over the span of 6 years at Adams Air Force Base in the Capital Wastelands, DC, kept aloft by the hard work of Proctor Ingram, in service for the past 5 years before being dispatched to the Commonwealth by Arthur Maxson based on intel reports from Paladin Danse. It's the best vehicle in the entire game, and it makes the Brotherhood of Steel such a cool faction to side with. What are your thoughts of the Prydwen? Do you think the coolness of this vessel outweighs its impracticality? Or maybe I'm being too pessimistic. Do you think that this is actually a practical vehicle? And would it be your choice if you led the Brotherhood of Steel? Let me know in the comments section below. I read all of the comments you guys leave on my videos, and I use them as inspiration for my new videos. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Like I did with the Institute, I am planning a series of videos on the Brotherhood of Steel that deals with the morality of siding with them and the motivations of their leadership. If you have a request for a specific Brotherhood of Steel video that you want me to make, let me know in the comments. And if you like this video and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. Patreon subscribers gain access to my private Discord server, as well as a bunch of other cool Oxhorn perks. But more than anything, I am so glad that you guys are here watching today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning with a brand new video.